Your Yakuza stories are absolutely fascinating. Do you have any more?
Well, I had a run-in with the Yakuza once myself.
Uh-oh.
It's a respect story because the Yakuza they they control the night world, and one of their most famous, probably the most famous celebration they have is at New Year's, Shogatsu. And the Yakuza like to go to the Shinto shrine at Shogatsu, right at the tick of New Year's, and they'd take all the bar girls and the nightclub owners and the moneylenders and everybody in their world, and you go to the Shinto shrine and you pray for good luck and fortune and don't get arrested and whatever. Right? And it's kind of a thing for them, especially in traditional areas. And we also would like to go at that time because you see all kinds of interesting people that you wouldn't see normally. Normally, Japan is very, you know, guys in suits, little mama-chans, kids, old people. It's very straight, very calm, very peaceful. But if you show up at midnight at New Year's at the shrine, Shinto shrine in the big city, then you get to see the other side, the dark world. So my friend Ron, and this my friend, he was a kindergarten teacher. Okay, so we go together to see this, and we see the New Year's celebration, and we hang around for a couple of hours. It's pretty cold, and we decide to come home. And so we're in this clapped out Mazda, and we're driving the back road out of this where the shrine was down into a rice paddy. And we get about three-quarters of the way across this narrow one-lane road, and the other end, a sleek, brand new black Mercedes pulls into the same, like, like for the same lane. Now, in Japan at that time, the only people who drove brand new, black, shiny new Mercedes were the Yasan, the Yakuza. And the reason they did it is they owned the Yanase, they owned the Mercedes-Benz importation company. So all the Yakuza members imported their cars through the Yakuza uh, Mercedes-Benz importer. And I sort of thought I could see what was going to happen. He saw us and we saw him. And there was only room for one car to come down. And he was at the end and he wasn't getting out of the way. He was just stopped there idling. And he was waiting for us to back up. And I'd have had to back up a couple of 100 yards on a narrow rice road, at 2 o'clock in the morning after a few drinks. And I wasn't too keen on that, right? But I wasn't keen on it anyway for this respect thing because he was disrespecting us. And so I thought to myself, Yakuza, whoever, I'm not. And so I drove straight towards him. And he had the car kind of blocking the entrance. But there was enough, well, there was kind of a bit of room. You might be able to slip by, but you're going to have to sort of damage his car a bit, right?
Boy.
So I slowly edge up to him and I look over at my kindergarten friend and I say, physical confrontation or car chase? Your choice. And he's just looking at me, right? Being a good kindergarten teacher, he says, car chase. So I pull up to the Yakuza car, and there's no way I can get by without taking off his paint. So I just I'm grinding down the side of his car, right, with this clapped out Mazda. And I do the window down, and I said to him, Happy New Year. And just took the paint all the way down his car.
Oh.
And then sped off. Now,
Oh.
speeding off in a clapped out Mazda is whatever. This guy's in a brand new Merc. He reverses and comes after us. And he's got all the horsepower he needs to take us any way he wants to, right?
Yeah.
And Ronnie's looking worried, right? What's going to happen here? The Yakuza are after us, right? And we're racing around. And I thought to myself, okay, what's a strong point of a brand new Merc? When you think of a brand new Merc, what are its strong points?
The casing.
The casing's heavy.
Engine power?
Engine power. It's fast, strong, good acceleration. There's no way I can run away from him. We get in a straight stretch, he has me. And I thought to myself, what's the advantage of a clapped out Mazda? You don't give a shit what you do with the car. It's more maneuverable. It's easier to turn. And so I thought, I'm going to take this boy on a ride. So I took him in down these narrow country lanes. Now, you've got to go to Japan to see how narrow country lanes can get. Basically, it's the tires are right on the edge of the road, both sides. And I'm swishing and turning, twisting. He's right on me, though. He's got powerful lights, and so I thought, how am I going to lose this guy? He'll chase me all night long, right? So I knew this farmer. He's pissed off because people used to park on the side of next to his house. So we put some great big stones about this big, 1, 2, 3, 4 in a row. And so I thought to myself, this is our moment of truth. So I was racing down there, and I don't know what you guys call it. We used to call it a California brake, right? And what you do is you don't hit the foot brakes. You pull on the side brake. And I just made a hard turn right into this narrow lane. But of course, he didn't see my brake lights come on. So he hammers into it, and this great big Mercedes Benz, bam, into the stones on the other side of his car. And we just zip and turn and twist. And of course, I know this area really well. And I don't know where he came from, but he got lost. And I sat up on the hill and watched him wandering around for a while, and then he went home.
So you were in Japan for a while. Do you speak Japanese?
Yeah.
And the Stephen Beatty podcast, then, there was a story he told us that you had some details to add.
That's right. Do you remember in his story, he said that there was a rumor he'd heard that 2 prison guards had killed a prisoner. But he wasn't really sure, and he didn't know if they hurt him or if they actually killed him. Well, that story he told actually is worse than he told it. 2 prison guards killed 3 prisoners. And the way they did it was diabolical. They tied them up in a straitjacket. They pulled down their pants. And then they put a fire hose up their ass and just turned it on full pressure. And it pulverized their intestines. But of course, here's the beauty of it. There are no bruises. There are no outside marks. And after the third one, they only got popped because statistically, prisoners dying in Japan like that, unknown causes, is almost 0. So 1, well, yeah, of course. 2 is right on the edge. 3, somebody's dirty. So they got done for that. Can you imagine?
What have they done to piss the guards off?
Well, in the Japanese prison, I've never been to the prison, so if you listen to Mr. Beatty's podcast, he can give you the details. But from what I know, you're not allowed to look at a guard. Looking at him is dumb insolence. That's a violation. You're not allowed to sit down unless you're told to. You're not allowed to stand up unless you're told to. You can't walk. You have to do this little run where they go everywhere. You can't stop working. You work until you're told not to. And so what probably happened is some prisoner might have said fuck you, or not done what he was told to, or looked at the guy, or who knows what the violation was. But the thing is, if you have absolute power over somebody, then what? The urge to push it, the urge to go to the limit, it's almost inevitable that somebody's going to do that.
Well, look at that experiment that they did with the prison guards, and the actors started to get into it, didn't they?
Well, it's part of being the human animal, I think. I think I mentioned about predation. Weakness triggers predation. So if you're with a dog, if you see a strange dog and you're afraid and you start to back off or run, then the dog will bark and go for you. But if you come off strong and confident, the dog can smell that and he'll sit and look at you, watch you. Well, we're the same. We don't like to think that, but we're the same. So the human animal watches for weakness. And if you're a prisoner in that kind of condition where you're not even allowed to look at a guard, and the guards control everything in your life, basically they can do what they want with you.
If it's that strict, then how do the Yakuza, like, play the system? Or because I imagine they've got the most play if they're the local mafia in the Japanese prison
No,
system.
because the prison guards and the police despise the Yakuza as
Really?
individuals. They just call them, in fact, do you know what Yakuza means?
No.
Yakuza, it's the lowest, the weakest hand in the game of Hanafuda. It's a Japanese card game. So you know how we have a full house and a royal flush and a straight? Well, Yakuza are the weakest cards you can have. So basically, calling someone a Yakuza means you have the weakest hand in society. You are the lowest animal in the stack as far as normal people are concerned. And the Japanese also, they look at them as human trash. And so the Yakuza have turned that to their benefit. They say, you look at us as human trash, and that's who we are. And we're going to be that human trash. We're going to put it right in your face. And so the police are hard with them once they get them, and the prison guards are hard with them. And so I think Mr. Beatty told a story about how one guy just whispered to him, "Isn't it cold today?" And that was enough for them to get thrown in the cooler, right? Just
Yeah.
just whispering that. So it's a total control situation.
Yeah. If you're watching this, then you want to watch Beatty's podcast, I'll put it in the description box. It's world's strictest prison in Japan. So the Yakuza then, do they have? I'm curious about the structure. Do they have one boss, or is it like a cartel has a number of bosses? How do they structure?
There's one boss. There has to be one
There's always
boss.
one overall
Yeah,
boss.
yeah. There
Yeah.
has to be, because otherwise you end up with, as you know, internecine wars. As people fight it out to see. I mean, that's what happened to with Chapo Guzman, wasn't it? He was the cartel boss, and once they took him out, all this violence cracked off because then all the underbosses started fighting each other. Right?
Yeah, and it was Escobar. It was what faction of the Medellin cartel, the Castaño brothers, that went after him in the end because he was cannibalizing his own associates. Yeah, and with the war on drugs as well, all the cops we've interviewed say that when you arrest a dealer or a boss, then everybody fights for that turf, and all the underlings fight for that position, and it just creates even more crime.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
as it would. Yeah.
yeah. So Yakuza's got one boss then, and then it just has various franchises underneath it.
Well, there's about 4 or 5 big gangs that control the country.
4 or 5 big gangs within the Yakuza,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
separate?
in the Yakuza,
Okay.
and they're mostly regional. The Sumiyoshi Ringo, and it's gone down recently though, because let me tell you a story. This is an interesting story. This is from the bottom up. I knew this guy. He was an artist, a Japanese artist, and he couldn't make any money as an artist, and so he opened a coffee shop across from a train station. And what he did was kind of clever. He was like a barista, and he sold this high quality coffee, but he turned the second half of the shop into like a mini art gallery of his art. And he'd talk to these ladies, mostly women, housewives, and he'd chat with them about coffee and this and that, and gradually steer them towards his paintings, and then sell them a few of his paintings. And this business was going on for about 6 months, and it was, he was quite pleased with it. And one day, this guy walks in, this little Weasley guy, and the guy says, "You need to buy 5 tickets to this concert, and they're $150 a piece." And he has tickets, and it's a concert. And the guy says, "Well, I'm not interested in this kind of music, thank you." And the guy says, "Well, It's really good music. You really should go. And he says, no, I'm not interested. That's fine. Thank you. So the guy disappears. And 2 days later, these three guys walk into the coffee shop early in the morning. Sunglasses, black sweaters, black pants, black jackets. And then they take off their sunglasses, and then as each mama-chan comes into the coffee shop to get her coffee, they just stare at her. They just stare at her. They don't say anything. They don't do anything. They're paid for their coffee. And she gets uncomfortable and leaves. And they're there all day long. And they leave 5 o'clock when he closes. They don't threaten him. They don't say anything to him. And this goes for 3 days. And he doesn't know what to do. He phones the police. He says, there's these strange guys in my coffee shop. And the police says, well, what are they doing? He says, well, they don't do anything. They just drink coffee and sit there. And the police says, well, so what? And he says, yeah, but they're frightening my customers. And he says, well, what do they say to them? Nothing. What do you mean you're frightening them? They don't say anything to them. And then about a week later, the same Weasley guy comes in with the tickets. And he says, the concert, I still have some tickets for you if you're interested. And suddenly the coffee shop owner is interested. And he never sees the other guys again. Now think about that. There have been no threats. There actually is a singer doing a concert. The tickets, what's the price for a ticket, right? I mean, you could easily, how much do they charge nowadays to go to a live concert? How much is Glastonbury? I don't know.
Hundreds of pounds, isn't it? Yeah.
So think about that scare. How are you going to nail the Yakuza for that? Now they collect money, at least when I was there, from all bars, all restaurants, all nightclubs, any kind of gambling, pachinko center, anything like that, even from coffee shops that some artist sets up outside the train station. Now just imagine the money you're making. That's not even, what would you call it, protection?
Yeah.
But it's so much smoother than the old mafia story.
Insurance.
It's so smooth that...
Where they go with baseball bats and break your arm.
Well, yeah, I mean, can you imagine? What are you going to, what's the prosecutor going to say? What are the police going to say? There's nothing to say.
So you give a structure of one boss and then 5 regions?
Well, there's many regions, but...
So does each region, I assume, then has a regional boss?
Well, inside each gang. So each gang, it's like a company organization. The Japanese are very structurally organized. There's the oyabun. Oyabun is the boss. And then there's the different levels of gangster underneath them. And the lowest level are the chimpira, the wannabes. And they're the ones that sort of, are causing trouble at the street level.
Did you see the tattoos of the Yakuza? Do you know what they mean?
Well, I mean, they have the best tattoos in the world. It's an art form.
Really?
Yeah, easily. It's an art form. I mean, we're not talking, supreme white power stamped on your forehead. We're talking giant big dragons and cherry blossoms and samurai swords and everything you can imagine. And they take it seriously. So the thing is, a guy I know, he's a liver surgeon, works in a hospital. And we once got on the topic of the Yakuza, and he said, don't worry about the Yakuza. I said, what do you mean? He said, they're all dying. I said, what do you mean? He said, they all get liver cancer and die. He says, I see them every day. He says the combination of the shooting speed, the tattoos, and all the heavy drinking, they just burn their livers out. Hep C. So there's a downside. But yeah, if you ever get a chance, those Japanese tattoos, look at an album. They have albums of the Yakuza tattoos. They're pretty impressive.
I'll have to Google some of that.